the next in our series here. Today, I really want to dig into a topic that's near and dear to my heart: managing SailPoint with DevOps. Many programs that we join, many customers have had identity governance implementations that have struggled. And a lot of that is due to, in my opinion, a lot of legacy behaviors and patterns of the teams on how they manage the applications, and how they could better build a service for the organization, right? At the end of the day, we're all aware that there aren't enough identity and access management people in the world to solve all of the problems. And in many ways, we've hurt ourselves in that area as well. So what I'm going to walk through today is a little bit about why DevOps, why it's important to your identity and access governance program, and then what we call the 5 stages of DevOps maturity inside of identity governance. You'll note a quote at the bottom that I like to use a lot of times when talking to customers. A lot of times we're seen in the identity arena as a cost center, right? And it's just a necessary evil of doing business, and I think that's a problem with cybersecurity in general. And while a lot of things in cybersecurity are necessary to lower the risk on the organization, keep you out of the news, we can actually do some really great things with identity governance that actually makes the business more agile and actually allows them to move faster. So we'll run through today a little bit on how to get there with your organization. So we've heard about me enough in the past, so I'll skip all this. But at the end of the day, I think in general, in identity, we've failed. And a lot of times we've failed the organizations that we support in that we don't treat these like a traditional software development project. We treat these as a one-off. A lot of times I see people just making changes directly into production, not going through normal testing, validation procedures, people logging directly into servers, making changes on one server, get distracted, forget to make changes on the other. And if we were a consumer-facing application, a lot of times we'd all be fired for what we're doing. And because of that, it causes us to lose, the organizations we work for, to lose a lot of trust in our services. And by taking a more DevOps approach, right, we're all surrounded by agile DevOps, continuous integration, continuous delivery, watching a lot of the delivery teams within the organizations we support moving towards those paradigms. And then they look at us and say, hey, why does it take me a month or two to even get on your calendar to be able to onboard the next applications? Why can't I do some of this myself? So let's try and think about, as we grow out our programs, how we can change that. So internally at UberEther with our customers, we've come up with this identity DevOps maturity model. And at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is have faster solutions, improved performance, which a lot of times is being able to roll things out faster, give better responsiveness on the applications, right? Closing that window. We talked about contractor onboarding, right? A lot of times it's between 5 and 10 days to get contractors onboarded within an agency or an organization, right? We said if we can shorten that by 1.5 days, we're saving literally billions of dollars across the government every single year, right? So those are real numbers we can take back to a business and say, hey, we're not got a cost center here. We're actually making you money, right? Increased efficiency. So how are we building tools and capabilities to allow people to self-service, to make updates on their own without having to get developers involved? Continuous improvement, right? We should be at a point where we can push updates to our identity governance solutions on a daily basis, and in many cases, multiple times a day, right? We might not have to do that, but the ability to have the confidence in our tools and the way we build our processes is what we want to get to, right? We want to be as confident in our own tools and our ability to deploy, have the services online and available as any service in the organization, because at the end of the day, we're in the middle of people getting work done, right? Improving customer departments, right? Make it easier to do certifications, right? Give risk scores to the certifiers to say, hey, these 80% of the people, right? You might have 300 people you need to certify in this app. 80% of them, you don't even have to look at. They all look the same, and they all have used the app in the last 6 months since you ran your last certification. They're perfectly fine. But here's the outliers to pay attention to, right? Little things like that make a huge difference on the customer experience side. Reducing failures and rollbacks. I don't know how many organizations we go into and they're like, yeah, we only push updates, patches, and changes to our data governance solution like once a quarter. And we're up all weekend trying to figure out every time we deploy why it took so long, why it's down, what we missed, what's broken. And right, that's not a world to live in, right? If we can only tell the business, hey, you onboarded 5 new SaaS apps this quarter, yeah, it's going to be another 3 months before we actually can create users in those, right? They're going to laugh us out of the room and tell us, you know what, this is a pain in the butt. We're not going to use this anymore, right? And we're never going to get ahead of the game. So we'll walk through the 5 stages of growing from what I call really some of these less than ideal programs into a more stable maturity model where at the end of the day, we're aiming to get to a self-service approach with all of the application owners across the organization. So if they come in one day and say, hey, this entitlement used to be just you request and we give it to you. Now we need to put a manager certification there. We go, great, go ahead and do it yourself, right? But then we still have all of the controls to push that in and even roll it back if we need to. So let's talk about how we get there. So as we move through here, we'll see the CICD pipeline that we use internally at UberEther to build our SailPoint software and then deploy it out into the production environments. When we're done with most customers, we never touch our production environments anymore. And we really are able to turn off SSHing and logging into the production servers from a command line perspective, which many organizations go, what do you mean? How can you do that? We do that all the time. And we're like, why? You don't have to. If you have the build processes in place, those servers can automatically be rebuilt, completely hands off. And the benefit of that is, every single one of those is built exactly the same. And nobody has a chance to go in and make any customizations or changes on individual servers, which at the end of the day will increase your availability. So in stage 1, when we go into organizations, all we're looking for is normalization, right? At the end of the day, we don't want every single developer with their own code base randomly checking in. A lot of times they're not even checking in code. They're just copying it over to the servers piecemeal at a time. They're stepping on each other because they might have 1 or 2, 3, 4, even 20 developers, depending on how big the organization is, working on this code at the same time. And at the end of the quarter, they all go to merge together and nothing breaks. And then they've got to push out the release another month. So really what we're focusing on is getting everyone using version control, everybody checking in when their features are complete, and everybody checking out yesterday's updates to code every single day, right? And then every day we're building from the same baseline, testing from the same baseline ourselves, and we know when things are breaking sooner than that great merge at the end. And at the same time, right, work on having a repeatable build process. SailPoint has a tool called the Standard Services Build that many organizations we work with don't even know exists. And it will allow you to take that code from your repository and build the WAR file, which is the piece of code that gets deployed to the servers to run the system, right? So if you can just get everybody working out of the same code repository, working off the same changes on a daily basis, and then building it with the same set of tools, instead of some people writing shell scripts, some people copying manually, you'll be amazed at just the progress this will give you in repeatability and confidence in your platform. At UberEther, we've built a Docker build repository. So this kind of gets most organizations right into stage 2. But what we do there is we have a MySQL database, a Tomcat server that runs SailPoint, and then have already integrated the standard services build into that. So as an organization, you can just say, here's our code repository for SailPoint, here's the Docker build, and every single day, our developers are literally rebuilding their entire dev test product or their local development environments on their laptops the exact same way we build production, right? So we're closing that gap every single day of, hey, did we put a breaking change in yesterday? Nope, all good, right? And a lot of our team does this multiple times a day. These builds happen in like 10 minutes or less on most laptops. So, right, we're even finding out within minutes sometimes of check-ins that, hey, what you did over there broke my build. Let's figure this out. And then we can push the updates right to production tonight. So this is completely free. We've open sourced it. Please feel free to use it and provide feedback as well. We're always growing the capabilities there. I actually checked last night, and we had about 300 downloads of that in the last 2 weeks. So you can tell how popular it is with that, with many of the SailPoint developers around the world. So, all right. And then as we get into stage 2, we call this standardization, right? So I talked about in using that Docker build to use the same Docker instance, right? You want your developer laptops to look exactly or as close to your production environment as you can, right? We don't always have all the same production data sources, all the same target applications to talk to, but right, we want that to be as close as possible and be loaded with a set of repeatable users to test from locally on each developer's laptop. Too many places we go in and there's the shared development environment that, oh, I can't work for the next 3 hours because Sally's testing her build. I just got to wait for it to be done. She's going to have the data all messed up. I can't validate what I'm doing, right? That's not a position you want to be in. You've got highly paid resources, right? A lot of times they're outside contractors that are also highly paid on an hourly basis that are sitting around waiting, right? You want to make sure that they are as efficient as they can be, right? So same Docker instance, checking into the same code repository. And here, right, in stage 1, everybody's building the same way. But in this case, we're bringing in a continuous integration tool that builds that code every time as something is checked in. And then if it passes the test, right, we merge that right into the development environment. So right now, instead of the developers individually building the code and pushing it to production, we're building it in a repeatable process that nobody even has to touch anymore. And when we're ready to release, right, we have an image ready to go to be deployed to the production servers, right? At this point, it's still a manual release in many cases. We're merging code from the feature that the developer put in into the development branch of the code, right? That gets built, those tests gets passed. And then once the tests pass, we can merge that right into master, right? And get that ready as a pull request to go into production, right? So now we've got completely hands-off, repeatable builds that every time you push production, you know what's going to be there, and you know every server is going to be deployed the same way. Additionally, with that, you also know every build that has happened, that if you ever need to go back, you can say exactly what code was running on what server in production on what day, right? And a lot of times when you're in an audit problem, you've got somebody who you're doing an investigation on, the auditors are going to come to you and say, why did that person have access to that thing on that day? And a lot of times in today's organizations that we work with, they go, I don't know, I can tell you why they would have it today, but we changed some policies 2 months ago, and yeah, we don't know what those were, right? That's not a happy position to be in with auditors. So as we move to stage 3, we're really looking at expansion, right? This is when you start really starting to see some efficiencies. So again, we're still building repeatably, but now we're pushing out images, right? And every time we're done with a successful build, we've got an image ready to go to push to production anytime we want, right? And while it's not automatically doing it after the check-in, we're ready to go that, right, in an agile world, you're supposed to have testable code or releasable code at the end of every sprint, right? We might not release every sprint, but it should be releasable. And that's what this is getting to, right? These are your ready to release images and then pushed into, can be Docker Cloud, can be AWS's container repository, the Azure container repositories, right? But that's all staging and ready to go. And then we're also pushing immediate feedback to our own developer teams that, hey, we've got a production release ready today. Hey, we passed all of our tests today. Hey, we had a failure today. Go figure it out and fix it, right? That immediate feedback and seeing constant updates of, hey, we just pushed something out. Hey, we're ready to go to the production on this. Like, that drives your teams to be more engaged and push more, right? And you get more out of them that way. And then the other thing we start noticing at this stage is a lot of times there's repeatable templates. A lot of organizations we go into, right, they have a history of managing Active Directory groups for a lot of their access, right? So you might have a Active Directory group, right, that is, in this case, it was the dev LDAP DISA access entitlement that people are being given. And then we can create a selector that says, if you have a secret clearance, your training is valid, you're part of the Army military branch, and this is a key that says if you want to start this after a certain date, and they are an active, right? Inactive is not equal to true, automatically put them in this group, right? This normally in SailPoint is somewhere between 500 and 1,500 lines of code, depending on how you do it. But now our teams can say, oh, you've got Active Directory groups that are managing your app. That's awesome. We can write this 10, 15 lines of JSON code, put it into our build process, and automatically generate those 500 to 1,500 lines of code on the SailPoint side. And if somebody comes in and says, oh, well, we want to add them to this group, but we really don't care if their training is valid anymore, right? We can just take out this line, check it back in, and all the code is updated, right? Similarly, we can say, hey, we're going to put in a group says that if you want access to that group, all you need to do is request it, right? And then you go into SailPoint, it pops up as the DISA Army ATCTS application. They search for it, they request it, and we immediately put them into this ATCTS access DN, right? 2 months later, somebody comes back to us and says, hey, we actually realized we should probably put an approval scheme on that. So I want a approval scheme that is application owner. And then we build a template that says, all right, give me the name of the application owner, or give me a group of application owners to route this to, and then put in the list of people to populate that group for immediately. Again, hundreds and thousands of lines of code distilled down to 5 lines of JSON, right? Makes it much, much easier to quickly onboard these applications, right? And that's really when you start getting efficiencies, right? I can write up a pretty simple web page that teaches a non-technical user how to build these 15 lines of JSON, right? I don't have to have a X $100 an hour SailPoint developer to do this stuff anymore, right? I can take a business analyst. I can turn this over to the application owners themselves in many cases to manage these things, right? But we're building these repeatable templates, these repeatable tools internally to accelerate our deployment. A lot of organizations ask us, like, how can you onboard 400 applications within a customer in a year? And it's because we've invested in building repeatable templates like these that make all of this faster and easier. That, right, I can go in and very quickly say, okay, tell me your AD group, tell me the criteria of who goes into that group, and put that in and have it out there by tomorrow, right? Versus gathering requirements, taking a bunch of time to write the code, validating the code. Since this is repeatable, everything is built the exact same way every single time, right? So this is really where we see organizations starting to take off, right? And really starting to deliver great results over and over again. So from there, our next phase, and externally, this isn't a big bang to the rest of the consumers of the service inside of the organization, but internally within the development team, right, this is awesome, right? At this point, we have all of our system configurations are automated, right? We are building Docker images, we are building release artifacts if you have WAR files instead, and able to push those to production servers at any time we want. Right? That in itself, and having the faith in your tools and your automation to push that out on a daily basis. If somebody comes in and says, hey, we need this, we forgot this application's going live on Monday, here's the connection info, hey, we've got these groups that we need to be populated. You can look at them and be like, okay, no big deal. We'll roll it out tomorrow night. And they'll look at you and be like, what do you mean? I thought we were going to have to delay this release for weeks. No, we're confident in our tools and our delivery to push this out on a daily basis, right? That blows people's minds. And then they start looking at you like, what other problems can you help me solve, right? And that really is driving back that business value for the organization, show that you're enabling people to do more things in a secure way, right? Similarly, we have all of our provisioning is automated of the servers, of the components. A lot of times in this case, right, we're spinning up servers during the big batch loads that happen in most organizations on a nightly basis, and then turning them off to save money during the day when they're not being used for batching. If you have updates to the, right, we have to rotate our passwords to the applications we're connecting to. It's in a config file. We go in one spot, update it, check it in, and then push it out. We like to split that out so that anyone looking at the Git repo doesn't see those things, and those things get merged into our build processes from a separate repo by approved people. But right, all of those things that a lot of times people just go into production, update the screens or update the backend flat files, and like I said, get distracted, right? And forget to do it on the other server and start wondering, well, why does that thing only work half the time? Or, hey, sometimes that thing gets provisioned right away and other times it fails 5 times and then works. Well, guess what? Those 5 times it failed, it all ran on the same server that has the old password that failed. Oh, shoot, guess what? We just locked the account because we failed it 5 times in a row. Now everything's failing, right? These are all the things that happen in production on a regular basis that, right, cause confidence to be lost in our teams in their deployments. And then, right, after we get to automated delivery in stage 4, we get to stage 5. And this is really when we have faith that we can start delegating some of these automations and some of these tools we've built out to, right, the application owners, the developers on the application teams that might not even be part of our identity and access management teams, right? All of those tools we've built for ourselves internally, now we can turn external, right? And for example, for those that work in the DoD, we have something that is the 2875 form. And in many organizations today, it is literally still this PDF form that gets filled out. You email it to your manager. Your manager then emails it to your security officer, who manually goes out and checks your clearance information, who then manually sends that over to a help desk team for that application that finally creates your account. And chances are they mistyped your email address and you never see that the email was actually created. Or somewhere along the way, someone's out on vacation for 2 weeks and you're waiting for access. We got brought into a DoD organization that said, this is absolutely crazy. We want to automate this. And then they hit us with but we have 10,000 applications that use this. And we went, oh, that's a lot. Okay, well, we already have these templates for AD that do very similar things. All right, so we were able to very quickly, within a matter of weeks, distill this down into these lines of code, which relate to different parts of the form here, right? We might make different parts mandatory depending on if they're doing activations or deactivations. We might have specific directories or files that we want to give them checkboxes for on these forms. But now they're all appear online inside of the SailPoint tool, and then are automated. So as soon as it goes in, there's an update, right? As soon as it gets routed to the security officer, we show them, hey, we checked your security attributes within the last 24 hours. These are what they were. They pass all the policies. All you have to do is validate that you agree on this person and let it go. And in many cases for these systems, we're still, at the end of the day, generating that PDF form and sending it over to the help desk. But now we have a centralized source for all of this information of who approved what, when, and when it was routed for actual creation of the accounts. And then we can, from here on out, now that we've got the data, be able to start working on enterprise roles. But right, previously, these were literally sent around in emails or sometimes one-off SharePoint sites that then at the end were printed and put in filing cabinets. Right? Good luck trying to build enterprise roles, pulling papers out of filing cabinets at literally hundreds of locations across the country. Right? But at this point, we're turning this back over to the business and saying, hey, we're mature enough as a program that we trust you to manage your own applications. You need to make an update that says, right, your provisioning, you want to change from just notify and send the email to the system owner to be directly connect. All right, give us the connection information. We'll populate this in here, and now it's automatically doing it. Or, hey, initially your approver was manager and it's good to go. Now you want to go manager and system owner. That's great. As we saw on the previous page on step 3, right? Go ahead and change your approval scheme to be manager, comma, system owner, right? And then just put it back to us, right? We don't have to make those code changes. You don't have to get on our calendar and talk through it. You can do it yourself, right? And at this point, as the applications are being onboarded, right, we're moving at the speed of business and driving value back in. And, right, let's use the buzzword of the year, enabling everyone's digital transformation, doing it securely, and giving them all of the tools they need to do it with. So really, this is where we're seeing huge value in organizations and really changing that mindset of something like the identity governance tool and the identity programs from being cost centers to really driving operational efficiency and helping the organization move faster. So with that, that was it for today. So feel free to dump in if you've got any questions. We'd be more than happy to address them. Looks like we do have a couple that came in. So one of the questions was, with automation like this, how much time have you saved per year? So as always, that answer is it depends, right? If a lot of the things can be automated and have repeatable patterns, things can move very quickly. But like I said earlier, we have multiple organizations where we've onboarded over 400 applications in a year. And that's not because we have an army of 200 developers working on this, right? That's because we have the repeatable patterns to be able to say, give me this little bit of information and let me generate this out. And a lot of times we have ITSM systems, right? Our governance IA systems internally that has a lot of this information of, hey, who's the owner of that system? Hey, what level do you have to have a clearance or approval at, or what training to access that system? Right? And we can pull that data out and automatically build templates to build approvals for a lot of these things out of the box. So we just got done with a project where somebody else had said, okay, you want to onboard 400 applications. We're going to need, essentially, it was a team of about 40 people to do this. And we came in and looked at it and said, well, majority of these are just following a pattern. We can get this done with a quarter of that, right? So really huge numbers and differences in being able to do this. And right, we're rolling out those applications whenever we want. We're not waiting for Saturday night, keeping people up away from their families, well, away from people outside of their families because we're all at home right now. But right, you can live your lives and don't have to worry about the weekend deployment and being up at 10 o'clock at night and then working until 2 o'clock in the morning because something broke, right? You just have trust that it goes, right? And that in itself is time and value that it's hard to quantify, but definitely adds to the morale of the team. So other question, are other people doing things like this with SailPoint? There are some, but I will say at the end of the day, many organizations are, especially in the consulting world that come in to do this, are incentivized to put more people on the ground. And the longer they can be with you, the more money they make. So all of these tools are built into SailPoint. We just have taken some approaches at how we look at them and use them that most organizations don't, which is one of the reasons we're successful in what we do and can do so much with such a small team. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing that we've done that is preventing anyone else from doing it. Just a lot of people aren't incentivized to do that. So, all right, let me see if any other questions popped in. Looks like that's it for today. So with that, I will turn it back to Katie. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in 3 weeks to talk about onboarding of employees.